and we get a sense of where all this is going.
And the mics are muted when the other is talking. So let's take you to Philadelphia now and the first presidential debate of 2024.
Good evening, I'm David Muir, and thank you for joining us for tonight's ABC News presidential debate. We want to welcome viewers watching on ABC and around the world tonight. Vice President Kamala Harris and President Donald Trump are just moments away from taking the stage in this unprecedented race for president.
And I'm Lindsay Davis. Tonight's meeting could be the most consequential event of their campaigns, with Election Day now less than 2 months away. For Vice President Kamala Harris, this is her first debate since President Biden withdrew from the race on July 21st. Of course, that decision followed his debate against President Donald Trump in June. Since then, this race has taken on an entirely new dynamic.
And that brings us to the rules of tonight's debate. 90 minutes with 2 commercial breaks. No topics or questions have been shared with the campaigns. The candidates will have 2 minutes to answer questions, and this is the clock. That's what they'll be seeing. 2 minutes for rebuttals and 1 minute for follow-ups,
all right, let's go.
clarifications, or responses.
I'm on
Their
the game
microphones will
breakdown.
only be turned on when
That's
it's
the
their
screen
turn to
you're
speak.
sharing.
No pre-written notes allowed.
What?
There is no audience
The
here
screen
tonight
you're
in this
sharing
hall at the
is the
National
green
Constitution
breakdown.
Center.
Oh,
This is an intimate
shoot, my
setting for
bad.
2 candidates who have never
I thought
met.
I started.
President Trump
Okay,
won
hold
the
on.
coin toss. He chose to deliver the final closing statement of the evening. Vice President Harris selected
Can you
the
hear it?
podium to the right.
So let's now welcome the candidates to the stage. Vice President Kamala Harris and President Donald Trump.
Can't. You sure you don't have my stream muted?
Kamala Harris. Let's have a good debate.
Also, it's taking forever
Thank
to
you.
load. Hold on, let me stop
Welcome to you
streaming
both. It's wonderful to have you. It's an honor to
Hello.
have you both here tonight.
Hello?
Good evening. We are looking forward to a spirited and thoughtful debate.
Oh, there we go.
So let's get started.
All right, let's go.
I want to begin tonight with the issue that voters repeatedly say is their number one issue, and that is the economy and the cost of living in this country. Vice President Harris, you and President Trump were elected 4 years ago, and your opponent on the stage here
Oh, shit, you're
tonight
back.
often asks
Yeah,
his
I'm
supporters,
watching on here
are
'cause
you
my
better
parents are
off
not
than you were 4 years ago?
ready to watch
When it comes to the
glad
economy,
to have
do you
you.
believe Americans are better
Your
off
stream
than they
is
were
not
4
loading,
years
by
ago?
the way.
It's not loading?
I was raised as a
What's
middle
going on?
class kid. And I am actually
It's
the
just
only
not loading.
person
It's
on this stage who
just
has a
sitting on a
plan
load
that is
screen.
about lifting
just
up
might do
the
it in a
middle
minute
class and working people of America.
I did.
I
I've been
believe
sitting here
in
for like
the
over
ambition,
a
the
minute.
Kat, can you
aspirations,
see
the
it?
dreams of the American people.
Yeah, but it's
And that is
paused.
why I imagine and have actually a plan to
buffering?
build what I call an
Buffering?
opportunity
Oh my
economy.
God.
Because here's the thing. We know that we have a shortage of homes and housing. And the cost of housing is too expensive.
Bro, fix your internet.
Families need support to raise their
Why is
children,
it not working?
and I intend on extending a tax
you
cut
every other
for
day.
those families of
Make it call the
$6,000, which is the largest child tax credit
All
that
right,
we
Kat,
have
you
given in a
stream it.
long
I'll
time,
just watch it
so
on there.
that those young families
well, I
can
have to
afford to
log
buy a
into the
crib,
site.
buy a car seat,
No, just
buy
look- just
clothes
watch
for
it on
their
YouTube.
children. My
Okay.
passion, one of them, is small businesses. I was actually, my
That's a
mother
bullshit
raised
lie.
my sister and me, but there was a woman who helped raise us. Owner. I love our small businesses. My plan
I
is
wish
to
I could
give
tell
a
what you're talking about.
$50,000 tax deduction
It's still
to
buffering,
start
though.
up small businesses, knowing they are part of
She's
the
talking about small
backbone of
businesses
America's
and how she cares
economy.
them.
My
How they're the
opponent, on the
backbone
other
of
hand,
America's
his
economy.
plan is to do what he has done before,
That's some bullshit.
which is to provide a tax cut for billionaires and big corporations, which will result in $5 trillion to America's
that's what-
deficit.
we're all about.
My opponent has a plan that I call the Trump's sales tax, which would be a 20% tax on everyday goods that you rely on to get through the month. Economists have
Pause,
said
pause,
that
pause.
Trump
Paused.
Should we go back?
Um,
No, it's
paying
fine.
for tax cuts for billionaires.
President Trump, I'll give you 2 minutes.
First of all, I have no sales tax. That's an incorrect statement. She knows that. We're doing tariffs on other countries. Other countries are going to finally, after 75 years, pay us back for all that we've done for the world. And the tariff will be substantial in
your,
some cases. I took in billions and
captions.
billions of dollars, as you know, from China. In fact, they never took the tariff off because there was so much money they can't. It would totally destroy everything that they've set out to do. They're taking in billions of dollars from China and other places. They've left the tariffs on. When I had it, I had tariffs, and yet I had no inflation. Look, we've had a terrible economy because inflation has, which is really known as a country buster. It breaks up countries. We have inflation like very few people have ever seen before, probably the worst in our nation's history. we were at 21%, but that's being generous because many things are 50, 60, 70, and 80% higher than they were just a few years ago. This has been a
Look how
disaster
she
for
nods
people,
no.
for the
Yes,
middle
they
class, but
are.
for every class. On
They
top of
literally
that,
are.
we have
What do you mean?
millions of people
I'm what?
pouring into our country from prisons and jails, from mental institutions and insane
Oh.
asylums.
Bro,
and they're
both of
coming
you
in and they're
deserve to be in a
taking
mental institution.
jobs
Fuck off
that are
about that.
occupied right now by African Americans and Hispanics, and also unions. Unions are going to be affected very soon. And you see what's happening. You see what's happening with towns throughout the United States. You look at Springfield, Ohio. You look at Aurora in Colorado. They are taking over the towns. They're taking over buildings. They're going in violently. These are the people that she and Biden led into our country, and they're destroying our country. They're dangerous.
Venezuelan
They're at the
gangs took over
highest
an
level
apartment
of
building in Aurora,
criminality,
Colorado.
and we have to get them out. We have to get them out fast. I created one of the greatest economies in the history of our country. I'll do it again and even better.
We are going to get to immigration and border security during this debate, but I would like to let Vice President Harris respond on the economy here.
Well, I would love to. Let's talk about what Donald Trump left us. Donald Trump left us the worst unemployment since the Great Depression. Donald Trump left us the worst public health epidemic in a century. Donald Trump left us the worst attack on our democracy since the Civil War.
Oh my God.
And what we have done is clean up Donald Trump's mess.
What
What we have done and what I
What?
intend to do is build on what
There
we
are
know
riots
are the
and protests
aspirations
every
and
other
hopes of the
day.
American people, but I'm going to tell you,
There's
You was on the worst job.
You're
There's
going to hear
gangs
from
taking
the
over
same
apartment
old tired
buildings
playbook,
that
a
people
bunch of
live in.
lies, grievances, and name calling. What you're going to hear tonight
She's also
is
trying
a
to ban weed, and I
detailed
don't
and
support
dangerous
that.
plan called Project 2025 that the former president intends on implementing if he were
He
elected
said several
again.
times he doesn't support that.
I believe very strongly that the American people want a president who understands the importance of bringing us together, knowing we have so much more in common than what separates us. And I pledge to you to be a president for all Americans.
President Trump will give you a minute here to respond.
Number one, I have nothing to do, as you know, and as she knows better than anyone, I have nothing to do with Project 2025.
There we go.
That's out there. I haven't read it. I don't want to read it purposely. I'm not going to read it. This was a group of people that got together. They came up with some ideas, I guess some good, some bad. But it makes no difference. I have nothing to do. Everybody knows I'm an open book. Everybody knows what I'm going to do. Cut taxes very substantially and create a great economy like I did before. We had the greatest economy. We got hit with a pandemic. And the pandemic was not since 1917, where 100 million people died, has there been anything like it. We did a phenomenal job with the pandemic. We handed them over a country where the economy and where the stock market was higher than it was before the pandemic came in. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. We made ventilators for the entire world. We got gowns, we got masks, we did things that nobody thought possible. And people give me credit for rebuilding the military. They give me credit for a lot of things, but not enough credit for the great job we did with the pandemic. But the only jobs they got were bounce back jobs. These were jobs bounce back, and it bounced back and it went to their benefit. But I was the one that created them. They know it, and so does everybody else.
Vice President Harris, I'll let you respond.
So Donald Trump has no plan for you. And
what?
when you look at his economic plan, it's all about tax breaks for the richest people. I am offering what I describe as an opportunity economy.
You
and
are rich.
the
What do you
best
mean?
economists in our country, if not the world, have reviewed our relative plans for the future of America. What Goldman Sachs has said
We're so
is
fucked,
that
bro.
Donald Trump's plan
We're
would make
so
the economy
fucked.
worse.
If we have
Mine would
if we have
strengthen the
Colin-
economy.
Col-
What the Wharton
yeah,
School
that-
has
We
Yeah,
have
said
Kamala
is that
Harris,
Trump's
we're
plan
fucked. We have Trump,
would
we're less
actually
fucked.
explode the deficit.
We're
16
still fucked, but
Nobel
a little
laureates
less.
have described
Yeah.
his economic plan as something that would
Wait, who's
increase
Trump's vice
inflation
president
and by
this
the
year?
middle of next year would invite a
Trump is
recession.
not a vice president.
You just
No,
have to
who's
look
his vice
at
president?
where we are
J.D.
and
Vance.
where we stand on the issues. And I'd invite you to
No,
know
that was Harris's
that Donald Trump
president.
actually
No,
has
no,
no
it's Trump's.
plan for you
What's
because he is
Harris's
more
vice
interested in
president?
defending
No
himself
clue.
than he is in looking out for you.
I'm gonna
It's
Google
just
it.
a soundbite. They gave her that to say.
I love how the
I
microphone.
went to the Wharton School of Finance. And
Wait, hold on,
many of those
hold on. Did you
professors,
just
the
hear
top
what he said?
professors,
No.
think my plan is
Small businesses. I was actually
destroying our country. They're dangerous. Nobody's ever seen anything like.
we have done, and what I intend to do is build on what we know are the aspirations and the hopes of the American people. But I'm going to tell you all, in this debate tonight, you're going to hear from the same old tired playbook, a bunch of lies, grievances, and name-calling. What you're going to hear
You're way far
tonight
back, Kat.
is a detailed
I know.
and dangerous plan
Just
called
just
Project
go back to the live.
2025 that the former president
Okay,
intends
I-
on implementing.
What did he say?
He's like, that's just what they gave her to say.
It's
Just
a plan
wait, hold-
that's gonna
hold- hold the
bring
right
up
arrow
our
key.
worth, our value as a
Hold the
country.
right
A lot
arrow
of
key until it, yeah, there we go.
Is what she calls
click
is
the word
essentially a
live.
national sales
know you could do
tax.
that.
Your proposal calls for tariffs, as you pointed out here, on
you're
foreign
live right
imports
now,
across the board. You recently said that you
Oops.
might double your plan,
Sorry.
imposing
Harris missed big
tariffs up to
opportunity by not
20% on
picking
goods
Shapiro.
coming
Nobody
into this
likes fucking
country.
Ben
As you
Shapiro.
know, many economists say that with tariffs at that
Oh,
level,
she picked
costs are
Tim
then passed
Walz.
on to the consumer. Vice President Harris has argued it'll mean higher prices on gas, food, clothing, medication, arguing it costs the typical family nearly $4,000 a year. Do you believe Americans can afford higher prices because of tariffs?
They're not going to have higher prices. What's going to have and who's going to have higher prices is China and all of the
China.
countries that have been
China.
ripping us off for years. I was the only president ever. China was paying us hundreds of billions of dollars, and so were other countries. And, you know, if she doesn't like them, they should have gone out and they should have immediately cut the tariffs. But those tariffs are there 3.5 years now under their administration. We are going to take in billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars. I had no inflation, virtually no inflation. They had the highest inflation perhaps in the history of our country because I've never seen a worse period of time. People can't go out and buy cereal or bacon or eggs
That's
or
so
anything
real?
else. The people of our country
he's
are
trying to relate to
absolutely
the
dying
actual
with what they've done.
normal
They've
citizen.
destroyed the
Yeah.
economy.
Here's
and all
the
you have to
thing,
do is
though.
look at a poll.
I like
The
him
polls
because
say
he
80 and
realized what it's
85
like
and
to
even
have power, what
90%
it's like
that the
to
Trump
not have
economy was
power.
great, that their economy was terrible.
Vice President Harris, I do want to ask for your response, and you heard what the president said there, because the Biden administration did keep a number of the Trump tariffs in place. So how do you respond?
Well, let's be clear that the Trump administration resulted in a trade deficit, one of the highest we've ever seen in the history of America.
Because we were producing more
He
things.
invited trade wars. You want to talk about his deal with China? What he ended up doing is, under Donald Trump's presidency, he ended up selling American chips to China to help them improve and modernize their military.
Just like how the
Basically
Biden
sold us
administration sold
out when
a
a
lot of our oil
policy
reserves to
about
China.
China should
We're
be
producing
in
more oil
making
than
sure
Saudi
the
Arabia
United
right now.
States of America wins the
Yeah, we
competition
sold a
for the
good chunk of our oil
21st
reserves
century,
to China.
which means focusing on the
Under the
details
Biden
of what
Everybody
that
needs to stop right now.
requires,
I have a important
focusing on
announcement.
relationships
No.
with
I don't
our
care.
allies,
No, I accidentally
focusing
clicked
on
the
I
button.
literally
investing in
could give less than a
American-based.
fuck. We're
What
watching the
is it?
presidential debate.
Riley, please look at my screen share.
What is it?
Okay, I don't care.
I'm not missing. It's just Kamala Harris talking. I can't hear it, Jack. That was your announcement, man. I'm trying to watch the debate.
Xi for what he did during COVID. Look at his tweet. Thank you, President Xi, exclamation point, when we know that Xi was responsible for lacking and not giving us transparency about the origins of COVID.
President Trump, I'll let you respond.
First of all, they bought their chips from Taiwan. We hardly make chips anymore
Taiwan.
because of philosophies like they have and policies like they have. I don't say her because she has no policy. Everything that she believed
That's
3
not true.
years ago
That's
and
not
4
true.
years ago is out the window. She's going to my philosophy now. In fact, I was going to send her a MAGA hat. She's gone to my
gonna
philosophy.
send her a
but
MAGA
if she ever got elected, she'd change it. And it will be the end of our country. She's a Marxist. Everybody knows she's a Marxist. Her father's a Marxist professor in economics, and he taught her well. But when you look at what she's
Communism.
done to our
Karl
country,
Marx.
and when you look at these millions and millions of people that are
Millions
pouring
and
into our
millions.
country monthly, where it's, I believe, 21 million people, not the 15 that people say, and I think it's a lot higher than the 21. That's
You know what I
bigger
should
than
do?
New York State pouring in.
Fly in
And
the hood.
just look at what they're doing to our country. They're criminals.
1v1
Many of these
versus
people
Donald
coming in are
Trump and Kamala
criminals.
Harris in the
And that's
hood.
bad for our economy, too.
I
You
swear
know,
to
you
God.
mentioned before, we'll talk about immigration later. Well, bad immigration is the worst thing that can happen to our economy. They have, and she has, destroyed our country with policy that's insane. Almost policy that you'd say they have to hate our country.
President Trump, thank you. Lindsay?
I want to turn to the issue of abortion. President Trump, you've often touted that you were able to kill Roe v. Wade. Last year, you said that you were proud to be the most pro-life president in American history. Then last month, you said that your administration would be great for women and their reproductive rights. In your home state of Florida, you surprised many with regard to your 6-week abortion ban because you initially had said that it was too short. And you said, quote, I'm going to be voting that we need more than 6 weeks. But then the very next day, you reversed course and said you would vote to support the 6-week ban. Vice President Harris says that women shouldn't trust you on the issue of abortion because you've changed your position so many times. Therefore, why should they trust you?
Well, the reason I'm doing that vote is because the plan is, as you know, the vote is, they have abortion in the 9th month. They even have, and you can look at the governor of West Virginia, the previous governor of West Virginia, not the current governor, who's doing an excellent job, but the governor before, he said the baby will be born and we will decide what to do with the baby. In other words, we'll execute the baby. And that's why I did that, because that predominates, because they're radical. The Democrats are radical in that. And her vice presidential pick, which I think was a horrible pick, by the way, for our country, because he is really out of it. But her vice presidential pick says abortion in the 9th month is absolutely fine. He also says execution after birth. It's execution, no longer abortion, because the baby is born is okay. And that's not okay with me, hence the vote. But what I did is something for 52 years. They've been trying to get Roe v. Wade into the states. And through the
late stage
genius and heart and strength of 6 Supreme Court justices, we were able to do that. Now, I believe in the exceptions for rape, incest, and life of the mother. I believe strongly in it. Ronald Reagan did also. 85% of Republicans do. Exceptions. Very important. But we were able to get it, and now states are voting on it. And for the first time, you're going to see, look, this is an issue that's torn our country apart for 52 years. Every legal scholar, every Democrat, every Republican, liberal, conservative, they all wanted this issue to be brought back to the states where the people could vote. And that's what happened. And now, Ohio, the vote was somewhat liberal. Kansas, the vote was somewhat liberal, much more liberal than people would have thought. But each individual state is voting. It's the vote of the people now. It's not tied up in the federal government. I did a great service in doing it. It took courage to do it. And the Supreme Court had great courage in doing it. And I give tremendous credit to those 6 justices.
There is no state in this country where it is legal to kill a baby after it's born. Madam Vice President, I want to get your response to President Trump.
Well, as I said, you're going to hear a bunch of lies, and that's not actually a surprising fact. Let's understand how we got here. Donald Trump hand-selected 3 members of the United States Supreme Court with the intention that they would undo the protections of Roe v. Wade. And they did exactly as he intended. And now in over 20 states, there are Trump abortion bans, which make it criminal for a doctor or nurse to provide health care. In one state, it provides prison for life. Trump abortion bans that make no exception even for rape and incest, which understand what that means. A survivor of a crime of violation to their body does not have the right to make a decision about what happens to their body next. That is immoral. And one does not have to abandon their faith or deeply held beliefs to agree. The government, and Donald Trump certainly, should not be telling a woman what to do with her body. I have talked with women around our country. You want to talk about this is what people wanted? Pregnant women who want to carry a pregnancy to term, suffering from a miscarriage, being denied care in an emergency room because the healthcare providers are afraid they might go to jail, and she's bleeding out in a car in the parking lot. She didn't want that. Her husband didn't want that. A 12 or 13-year-old survivor of incest being forced to carry a pregnancy to term. They don't want that. And I pledge to you, when Congress passes a bill to put back in
was.
place
It
the
overturned
protections
Biden's
of Roe v.
presidency.
Wade. As President of the United States, I will proudly sign it into law. But understand, if Donald Trump were to be reelected, he will sign a national abortion ban. Understand, in his Project 2025, there would
He
be a
doesn't
national
endorse
He's
Project
not part of
2025.
it.
that would be monitoring your pregnancies, your miscarriages. I think
No,
the American
he's not. He
people
literally
believe
stated he's not.
that certain freedoms, in particular the
Several
freedom
times
to
he
make
said he's
decisions
not.
about one's own body, should not be made by the government.
Thank you, Vice President Harris.
Well, there she goes again. It's a lie. I'm not signing a ban, and there's no reason to sign a ban because we've gotten what everybody wanted. Democrats, Republicans, and everybody else, and every legal scholar wanted it to be brought back into the states, and the states are voting. And it may take a little time, but for 52 years, this issue has torn our country apart, and they've wanted it back in the states. And I did something that nobody thought was possible. The states are now voting. What she says is an absolute lie. And as far as the abortion ban, no, I'm not in favor of abortion ban, but it doesn't matter because this issue has now been taken over by the states.
Would you veto a national abortion ban if it came
Well,
to
I
your
won't
desk?
have to because, again, two things. Number one, she said she'll go back to Congress. She'll never get the vote. It's impossible for her to get the vote, especially now with the 50-50, and essentially 50-50 in both Senate and the House. She's not going to get the vote. She can't get the vote. She won't even come close to it. So it's just talk. You know what it reminds me of? When they said they're going to get student loans terminated, and it ended up being a total catastrophe. The student loans, and then her, I think probably her boss, if you call him a boss, he spends all his time on the beach. But look, her boss went out and said, we'll do it again. We'll do it a different way. And he went out, got rejected again by the Supreme Court. So all these students got taunted with this whole thing about this whole idea. And how unfair that would have been, part of the reason they lost, to the millions and millions of people that had to pay off their student loans. They didn't get it for free. But they were saying it's the same way that they talked about that they talk about abortion.
But if I could just get a yes or no, because your running mate, J.D. Vance, has said that you would veto it if it did come to your desk.
Well, I didn't discuss it with J.D. In all fairness, J.D. And I don't mind if he has a certain view, but I think he was speaking for me, but I really didn't. Look, we don't have to discuss it because she'd never be able to get it, just like she couldn't get student loans. They couldn't get student loans. They didn't even come close to getting student loans. They taunted young people and a lot of other people that had loans. They can never get this approved. So it doesn't matter what she says about going to Congress. Well, wonderful. Let's go to Congress. Do it. But the fact is that for years they wanted to get it out of Congress and out of the federal government. And we did something that everybody said couldn't be done. And now you have a vote of the people on abortion.
Vice President Harris, I want to give you your time to respond, but I do want to ask, would you support any restrictions on a woman's right to an abortion?
I absolutely support reinstating the protections of Roe v. Wade. And as you rightly mentioned, nowhere in America is a woman carrying a pregnancy to term and asking for an abortion. That is not happening. It's insulting to the women of America. And understand what has been happening under Donald Trump's abortion bans. Couples who pray and dream of having a family are being denied IVF treatments. What is happening in our country? Working people, working women who are working 1 or 2 jobs, who can barely afford childcare as it is, have to travel to another state to get on a plane sitting next to strangers to go and get the health care she needs. Barely can afford to do it, and what you are putting her through is unconscionable. And the people of America have not, the majority of Americans believe in a woman's right to make decisions about her own body, and that is why in every state where this issue has been on the ballot, in red and blue states both, the people of America have voted for freedom.
Vice President Harris,
Excuse me, I have to respond. Another lie. It's another lie. I have been a leader on IVF. which is fertilization.
you
The
say
IVF,
lie,
I have been
lie.
a leader. In
Yeah,
fact,
it feels like they're all just
when they
repeating
got a
themselves.
very negative decision
Yeah.
All
on
Trump has said is
IVF
lies.
from the
All
Alabama
Harris
courts,
is doing is talking
I
about
saw the
Trump.
people of Alabama
Yeah.
What am I
and the
doing? What am I
legislature
missing?
2 days later voted it
just said
in.
those
I've been a
lies.
leader on it. They
Well,
know
I'd
that,
like them
and
to
everybody
talk about
else knows it.
themselves.
I have been a leader on fertilization,
he's saying that
IVF.
she wants to
And the other thing,
support
they
Unlike
You
Trump
should
here, who
ask.
shut the fuck up
will
about
she
Trump,
allow
dude.
abortion in the 8th month, 9th month?
They
No,
both
like
say
2
each
minutes.
other are
Talk about
lying.
your own
Would you
shit.
do that? Why don't you ask her
Why-
that
why
question?
don't you
That's
answer
the
the
problem.
question? Would you
Because
veto?
under Roe v.
Answer
Wade,
the question,
you
would you
could-
I thought
you
they were
could
supposed to
do
be muted.
abortions in the 7th month,
Dude, they
8th
never
month,
muted
the 9th
them.
month,
Not true.
And probably after birth. Just
Yeah.
look at the governor.
Harris
former
only
governor
accepted it
of
because it's-
Virginia. The governor of
it's
Virginia
Kamala-friendly
said we put the baby
news
aside and then we
channel.
determine
That's
what
the
we
only
want to
reason
do
she
with the
accepted
baby.
it.
President Trump, thank you.
We're going to turn now to immigration and border
Wouldn't she
security.
really have-
We know it's an issue
wouldn't
that's
really have a
important to
choice.
Republicans, Democrats, voters across the board in this country. Vice President Harris, you were tasked by President Biden with getting to the root causes of migration from Central America. We know that illegal border crossings reached a record high in the Biden administration. This past June, President Biden imposed tough new asylum
I can't hear
restrictions.
any
We
of
know
you.
the numbers
Let's see.
have
Will
gone
she
up
mention Trump in her
significantly.
response?
But my question to you tonight is
I have
why
to turn
did the
Jack's volume up.
administration wait until 6
There we
months
go.
before the election to act? And would you have done
I had
anything differently from
everybody's
President
volume
Biden
down
on
when I
this?
had my
So
headphones
I'm
up
the
really
only
high.
person on this stage who has prosecuted transnational criminal organizations for the trafficking of guns,
Jack, say something.
drugs, and human beings. And let
Jack.
me say that
Did you hear
the
that?
United States Congress,
No,
some of the most conservative members of the United States Senate, came up with a border security bill which I supported. And that bill would have put 1,500 more border agents on the border to help those folks who are working there right now overtime, trying to do their job. It would have allowed us to stem the flow of fentanyl coming into the United States. I know there are so many families
That's another
watching
big
tonight
problem.
who have been personally affected by the surge of fentanyl in our country. That bill would have put more resources to allow us to prosecute transnational criminal organizations for trafficking in guns, drugs, and human
Scared.
beings. But you know what happened to that bill? Donald Trump got on the phone, called up some folks in Congress, and said, kill the bill. And you know why? Because
Kill
he
Bill.
preferred to
And you
run
know
on a
why?
problem instead
the
of
bill.
fixing a problem. And understand, this comes
thought we were talking
at
about
a
the movie
time
Kill Bill.
where the people of our country actually
sorry.
need a leader
Why
who
so
engages
serious?
in solutions, who actually addresses the problems at hand. But what we have in the former president is someone who is so serious.
Jack, stop.
And I'll tell you something, he's going to talk about immigration a lot tonight, even when it's not the subject that is being raised. And I'm going to actually do something really
I'm eating a
unusual,
big
and
stick
I'm going
of
to
meat right
invite
now.
you to attend one of Donald Trump's rallies, because it's a really interesting thing to watch. You will see during the course of his rallies,
Wow.
he talks
I
about
really
fictional
appreciate her
characters like
invitation
Hannibal
to
Lecter.
Trump's rally.
He will talk about
don't wanna
windmills
go to a
cause
Trump
cancer.
rally.
I
And
don't
what you
wanna
will
go
also
there.
notice is that people start leaving his rallies early out of exhaustion and boredom. And I will tell you, the one thing you will not hear him talk about is you. You will not hear him talk about
That's
your
a
lives,
lie?
your dreams, and
That's 'cause
your
you
being
paid all
and
the
your
bands
desires.
to go to your place
And I'll tell you, I believe
to
you
sing for
deserve
you.
a president. who
Actually,
puts
Trump
you
talks
first,
about
and
the
I
people in
pledge to
every
you that
single
I
one
will.
of his
Vice
rallies,
President
which
Harris,
is
thank you.
actually
President
really
Trump, on
funny.
that point, I want to get your response.
Well, I would like to respond.
Let me just ask, though, why did you try to kill that bill, and successfully so? That would have put thousands of additional agents and officers on the border.
First, let me respond as to the
Please.
rallies. She said people start leaving. People don't go to her rallies. There's no reason to go. And the people that do go, she's bussing them in and paying them to be there, and then showing them in a different light. So she can't talk about that. People don't leave my rallies. We have the
Half the
biggest
people at the rally
she
don't
knows
like
he's
the
full of some
rallies.
bullshit.
history of politics. That's because people.
I
wanna
love how
take
Jack
their
is all
country
for
back.
Kamala, and
Our
I'm all
country
for,
is being lost. We're a
Trump.
failing nation, and it happened 3.5 years
I'm for
ago.
either, man.
And
As long as-
He's kind of
what's
full of some
going on
bullshit.
here, you're gonna
I
end up in
mean,
World
I only
War
care
III,
about the
just to go into
policies.
another subject.
That's all I
What
care
they
about.
have
She's
done to
full
our
of
country
shit,
by
too.
allowing these
she is, too,
millions
I can't
and
say.
millions
No, she's
of
been
people
full-
to come into our
she
country
said that
and
there
look
has
at
been no
what's happening
inflation
to the
over the past
towns
4
all
years.
over
Yes,
the
there
United
has.
States. And a lot of towns don't want to talk. It's not going to be a raw.
Our
I don't
economy
think you
was really
understand the
good under
A
Trump,
lot
but
of
I
towns
hate
don't
that.
want to talk about it because they're so
Yes.
embarrassed by it. In
There has been a
Springfield,
shitload
they're
of
eating the
inflation.
dogs. The people that came in, they're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there. And this is what's happening in our country, and it's a shame. As far as the rallies are concerned, as far as the reason
heard
they
about
go
that.
is they like what I say. They want to bring our country
Bro,
back.
I
They
joined a
wanna
fucking
make
Hypixel
America
house.
great
The first
again.
thing
Very
is,
simple phrase.
she's such a
Make
negative
America
woman.
great
I
again.
hate Donald
She's
Trump.
destroying this
Everybody
country.
sucks.
And if
Are you
she
fucking
becomes
kidding me? I'm trying to play
president,
Minecraft
this
right now,
country
bro.
doesn't have a chance of success. Not only success, we'll end up being Venezuela.
Someone just said they're eating pets, guys.
I just want to clarify here. You bring up
Oh, I'm
Springfield.
just trying to play
Ohio,
Minecraft,
and
dog.
ABC News did reach out to the city manager there.
How do I
He
turn
told
off
us
chat?
There have been no credible reports of specific claims of pets being harmed, injured, or abused by individuals within the immigrant community.
Well,
All
I've seen
this-
people on television.
Let me just say here, this is
People on television say
oh,
my dog
oh.
was taken and used for food. So maybe he said that.
But I
Maybe
saw it on
that's a good
TV,
thing
so it
to
was
say for a
real.
city manager.
Okay,
I'm
okay,
taking this from
okay.
television.
That's what we're voting for?
All right, shut up. I just want to listen.
People that went there.
Why? Because it's on
Again, the
TV?
Springfield city manager says there's no evidence
I
of
need
that.
to
Vice
listen.
President
This is the
Harris,
whole
you
reason
respond
I'm
to the rest of
watching
what
this
you've
is because I need to for Pig.
Talk about extreme.
You're a pig.
This is gonna affect my life. That's why I want to watch
This
it.
is, I think, one of the reasons
This
why
matters
in
to me
this
now.
election,
We're gonna be
I actually
18 during
have
the
the
next presidency. We're gonna
endorsement
be adults.
of
Literally.
200
I'm gonna be an
Republicans
adult during
who have
for this next
formerly
president.
worked with President Bush, Mitt Romney, and
Oh,
John
not
McCain.
President
If Harris
Bush.
gets
Oh,
elected, I'll
including
finally
the
get sued
endorsement
for loan
of
relief.
former Vice President
Will
Dick
you a moment?
Cheney and Congress member
I don't want
Liz
student
Cheney.
loans. Yeah, relieve that shit
And
now.
if you want to really know
Nah,
the
that's gonna be
inside
another
track on
empty
who
promise.
the former president
Oh,
is,
wait,
if you
pull-
didn't make it clear already,
everybody just
just
had
ask
empty
people who
promises
have
left and
worked
right.
with him. His former chief of staff, a four-star general, has said he has contempt for the Constitution of the United States. His former national security
him a
advisor
sucker.
has said he is dangerous and unfit. His former Secretary of Defense has said the nation, the Republic, would never survive another Trump term. And when we listen to this kind of rhetoric,
I love how
when
he's
the
staring in his
issues
face.
that affect the American people are not being addressed, I think the choice is clear in this election.
President Trump, I'll give you a quick minute to respond
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because when I hear that, see, I'm a different kind of a person. I fired most of those
I'm
people. Not
just
so
scared for
graciously.
my
They did
well-being.
Bad things
So
or a
am I.
bad job. I fired
As-
them.
We're
going
They
to
never
war,
fired one
guys.
person.
He's not gonna
They
kill
didn't
gay
fire
people,
anybody
okay?
having to do with Afghanistan and the Taliban and the 13
I never said he was gonna
people
kill gay
whose-
people,
whose
but
were just killed.
it's not
viciously
gonna make our
and
life any
violently killed.
better.
And I got to know the parents and the family.
really don't
They
think
didn't
it's gonna
fire.
do
They
that
should have
much. He didn't
fired
do anything
all
during-
those generals, all
Even
those
when
top
I was
people,
bi, I never
because that
felt
was one of the
oppressed
most
at all.
incompetently handled
see
situations
anything against
anybody
gay people
has
talking.
ever seen. So when somebody does a bad job, I fire him. And you take a guy like Esper, he was no good, I fired him, so he writes a book. Another one writes a book, because with me they can write books, with nobody else can they. But they have done such a poor job, and they never fire anybody. Look at the economy. Look at the inflation. They didn't fire any of their economists. They have the same people. That's a good way not to have books written about you. But just to finish, I got more votes than any Republican in history by far. In fact, I got more votes than any president, sitting president, in history by far.
Let me continue on immigration. It was what you wanted to talk about earlier, so let's get back to your deportation proposal that the vice president has reacted to as well. President Trump, you call this the largest domestic deportation operation in the history of our country. You say you would use the National Guard. You say if things get out of control, you'd have no problem using the U.S.
With local
military.
police, yes.
You also said you would use local police. How would you deport 11 million undocumented immigrants? I know you believe that number is much higher. Take us through this. What does this look like? Will authorities be going door to door in this country?
Yeah. It is much higher because of them. They allowed criminals, many, many millions of criminals. They allowed terrorists. They allowed common street criminals. They allowed people to come in, drug dealers, to come into our country. And they're now in the United States and told by their countries like Venezuela, don't ever come back or we're going to kill you. Do you know that crime in Venezuela and crime in countries all over the world is way down? You know why? Because they've taken their criminals off the street and they've given them to her to put into our country.
Her.
And this will be one of the greatest mistakes in history for them
Damn.
to allow. And I think they probably did it because they think they're going to get votes, but it's not worth it because they're destroying the fabric of our country by what they've done. There's never been anything done like this at all. They've destroyed the fabric of our country. Millions of people let in, and all over the world, crime is down all over the world except here. Crime here is up and through the roof. Despite their fraudulent statements that they made, crime in this country is through the roof. And we have a new form of crime. It's called migrant crime, and it's happening at levels that nobody thought possible.
President Trump, as you know, the FBI says overall violent crime is actually coming down in this country. But Vice
Excuse me,
President
the
Harris,
FBI they were defrauding statements. They didn't include the worst cities. They didn't include the cities with the worst crime. It was a fraud, just like their number of 818,000 jobs that they said they created turned out to be a fraud.
President Trump, thank you. I'll let you respond, Vice President Harris.
Well, I think this is so rich, coming from someone who has been prosecuted for national security crimes, economic crimes, election interference, has been found liable for sexual assault, and his next big court appearance is in November at his own criminal sentencing. And let's be clear where each person stands on the issue of what is important about respect for the rule of law and respect for law enforcement. The former vice president called for defunding federal law enforcement, 45,000 agents, get this, on the day after he was arraigned on 34 felony counts. So let's talk about what is important in this race.
I'm sorry, I love that fucking thing.
That we turn the page.
Like, she's kind of
on
got him
this
here.
Same old tired rhetoric and address the needs of the American people. Address what we need to do about the housing shortage, which I have a plan for. Address what we must do to support our small businesses. Address bringing down the price of groceries. Yes. But frankly, the American people are exhausted with this same old tired playbook.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
She's kind of got there.
Every one of those cases was started by them against their political opponent. And I'm winning most of them, and I will win the rest on appeal. And you saw that with the decision that came down just recently from the Supreme Court. I'm winning most of them.
I just want to know their actual
it's called
plan to help.
weaponization.
Right?
Never happened in this country.
It's just back and forth.
They
when are we going to talk
weaponized
about
the
what you're going to do for the
Justice
country?
Department. Every one of those cases was involved
What do you
with the
support?
DOJ from
Let me know.
Atlanta.
Isn't that what they've been doing?
That's what they've been trying to do, I guess.
Attorney
They just
General
said they're
of New
gonna
York
do
and the
it.
DA in New York.
They're not saying
Every
how.
one of those cases, and then they say, "Oh,
I wanna know how they're gonna-
he's a criminal." They're the ones that
Give me some numbers.
made
Tell me
Trump
how you're
go
gonna.
after
How are we
me. By the
gonna-
way, Joe Biden was found essentially guilty
How do you
on the
plan on
documents
giving
case.
women-
And what happened in my
giving women
documents
the right
case?
to
They said, "Oh,
abortion
that's the
back?"
toughest
I know
of them
it's still
all."
legal in New
A
York, which is a
complete
really
and
good
total victory.
I
2
think it
months
should be
ago, it was
legal. How
thrown
should
out.
they give that back?
It's weaponization,
I
and
don't know
they used
how
it,
to give
and
it
it's
back.
never
I
happened in
can't.
this country. They used
I'm
it
not a woman.
to try and win an election. They're
President
fake
I try to understand.
cases.
President Trump, thank you. A really quick response here, Vice President Harris, on this notion of weaponization of the Justice Department.
Well, let's talk about extreme and understand the context in which this election in 2024 is taking place. The United States Supreme Court recently ruled that the former president would essentially be immune from any misconduct if he were to enter the White House again. Understand, this is someone who has openly said he would terminate, I'm quoting, terminate the Constitution of the United States, that he would weaponize the Department of Justice against his political enemies. Someone who has openly expressed disdain for members of our military. Understand what it would mean if Donald Trump were back in the White House with no guardrails, because certainly we know now the court won't stop him. We know J.D. Vance is not going to stop him. It's up to the American people
Vice President
stop
Harris,
him.
thank you. Lindsay?
Vice President Harris, in your last run for president.
This is the one that weaponized,
Dude,
not
they
me.
don't
She
keep
weaponized.
him muted.
I probably
don't
took
understand.
a
Isn't
bullet to them
the Project
because of
2025 the
things that
same
they
thing
say
as
about
Agenda
me.
47?
They talk about
I don't know.
democracy. I'm a threat to democracy.
I'm pretty sure it
They're the
is,
threat
because that's what
to
his website
democracy. It
is.
was a fake Russia investigation
We do have a lot to
that
get-
went nowhere.
But
It's
he's
the
not
same
a
exact
part. He's
thing.
not a
Vice
part of
President Harris, in
Project
your last run
25.
for president, you said you wanted to
But
ban
Agenda
fire.
47 is the same
Now
thing.
you don't. You wanted
If you tell
mandatory
me
government
Trump
buyback
or
programs
Project-
for assault weapons. Now
like
your
Trump,
campaign says
Project
you don't.
2025.com
You supported decriminalizing
is
border
him, I will
crossings.
actually kill
Now you're
myself.
taking a harder line. I know you say that
Because
your
it is
values
not.
have not changed.
It even
so
says
then
in
why
the
have so
website
many
that
of your
it's
policy
not him.
positions changed?
So
I don't know
my
if policy
values have not
47
changed, and I'm going to discuss every one of the, at least every
I
point
honestly
that
feel
you've
like she's
made.
gonna
But in
win.
particular, let's talk about fracking.
Oh,
'cause
she
we're here in
probably, no, she'll
Pennsylvania.
100%
I made
win.
that
She's
very
actually
clear
You'll
in
win,
2020.
but we're gonna
will
go
not
to
ban
war,
fracking.
bro.
I have not
Get
banned
ready to
fracking
be
as Vice
drafted.
President of
We
the
have
United States.
never
In
been
fact,
Oh,
close.
they
No,
added
you're
women to
fine.
the
You're a
draft, by
woman.
the way, so.
vote on the
You're a
Inflation
woman, Kat. You won't
Reduction
get
Act,
drafted.
which opened
Actually,
new
they're thinking about
leases
adding
for
women
fracking.
to the drafts.
They already
My
did.
Oh, never mind,
position
you're
is
cooked.
that
They
we
already
have got
did.
to invest
Oh, shit, you're
in
cooked.
diverse
Yeah.
You
sources
don't
of
got that
energy
anymore.
so we reduce
I'm
our
fleeing the
reliance
country.
We
on
have
I'm not
never been
fighting in no
closer
war.
to a
We
World
have
War III.
had
It's
the
actually terrible.
largest
Well, no, it's not true.
increase
But, like,
in
you know, Cold War.
domestic oil production in history
Dude, we've been
because
in
of
a
an
second
approach
Cold War
that
with China for,
recognizes
like,
that we cannot over-rely on
5-6
foreign oil.
years.
As
Russia's
it relates
getting
to my
antsy.
values, let me tell you,
Israel
I grew up
and
a middle-class
Palestine are
kid
antsy.
raised by a
Dude, the
hardworking
whole Middle
mother
East is
Do you
collapsing.
know that
who
Israel lobbies
worked
our
and
government?
saved and was able to buy our
Yup.
first home when I was
The
a
whole
teenager.
Middle East is collapsing
The
right
values
now.
I bring
Russia is
to the
is
importance of
just
home
threatening to
ownership,
attack
knowing
whoever
not
the hell they
everybody
want.
got handed
Yeah, they
$400
had-
Biden
million
isn't doing
on a
shit
silver
about it.
platter and then filed bankruptcy 6 times.
Poland's
Is a
not
value
happy
that I
either.
bring to my work.
Well, yeah,
to say we
Poland
are going
heavily-
to work with the
Poland
private
is just
sector and
arming
home
everything.
builders to
They
increase
are armed to the teeth.
They
3
ain't
million
getting invaded
homes,
again.
increase
They
by
are
3 million
ready
homes by the end of
to
my first
invade
term.
Russia.
My work that is related to having a friend when I was in high school who was sexually assaulted by her stepfather. And my focus then.
All right, why
on
are you
protecting
back on the
women and
abortion
children
shit?
from
We're
violent
gone from
crime
that,
is
bud.
based on a value that is
How
deeply
did we get
grounded
to
in the
this point?
How did we
importance
get back to
of
abortion?
standing up for those who are
Weren't we
most
just
Like,
vulnerable.
what?
What
My
were we even
work
on?
that is about
I
protecting
don't even
Social
know.
Security and Medicare is based on long-standing work that I have done, protecting seniors from scams. My values have not changed. And what is important is that there is a president who actually brings values and a
She
perspective
was the
that
person.
is about
She was
lifting
the
people
governor from
up
California, right?
and not beating people
Didn't she vote
down
to lower the sentences
and
on
name-calling.
on sexual
the
predators?
true measure of the leader
I don't know.
is the leader who actually understands
I think child
that
predators
strength
should
is
be
not in
tortured.
beating people down, it's in lifting people up.
They
I
shouldn't
intend
die.
to
They should be kept
that
alive.
President.
President
Like,
Trump,
because
you
that
were
First
death
of all,
is
I
too
wasn't
nice
given
for
$400 million. I wish I was. My father was a Brooklyn builder,
I
Brooklyn,
think death
Queens,
is too nice for them.
and
They
a
need to be
great
tortured.
father, and I learned a lot from him. But I was given a fraction
That's
of that, a
illegal.
tiny fraction.
Pedophiles
Nah,
need
give
to
it to
be
the
tortured.
CIA.
No, it's
Give it to the
pedophiles. Who
CIA.
cares?
Of dollars, many, many
Give 'em to
billions.
the CIA.
And when people
They'll do
see
with
it, they
anything
are
with
them.
even
Wait.
surprised.
No,
So we don't have to
but
talk
the
about that.
but the
Fracking,
ultra-rich
she's been
are the
against it for
pedophiles.
12 years. Defund
You've
the
seen the
police.
Epstein's Island
She's
flight
been against
logs?
that forever.
Stephen
She
Hawking
gave
went there.
all that stuff up. Very
They
wrongly,
wheeled his
very
ass onto the
horribly,
island.
and everybody's laughing at it. Okay, they're all laughing at it. She gave up at least 12 and
Trump was
probably
there.
14 or 15 different policies.
pictures of him with
She was
Epstein.
big on defund the
Holding
police.
kids.
In Minnesota, she went out. Wait a minute, I'm talking
It's
now.
literally Too Mad's
If you don't mind,
Twitter
please.
banner.
Does that sound familiar?
That's wild.
Don't lie.
She went out. She went
What
out
are we doing right now?
in Minnesota and wanted to let criminals that killed people, that burned down Minneapolis, she went out and raised money to get them out of jail. She did things that nobody would ever think of. Now she wants to do transgender operations on illegal aliens that are in prison. This
Nah,
is a
okay,
radical
sorry, the
left
alien thing is a bit too
liberal
much.
That would do this. She wants to confiscate your
call them
guns,
the
and she will never allow fracking in Pennsylvania. If she won the election, fracking in Pennsylvania.
Last
will
time I
end
remember,
on day
that was
one.
Kat's
Just to
biggest
finish
pet
one thing,
peeve.
so important in my
It
opinion.
is.
What?
So I got the oil business
Calling
going like nobody
immigrants
has ever done before.
illegal
When
aliens.
they took over,
That is my biggest
they
pet
got rid
peeve,
of
but
it. They
still.
got rid of it, and the prices were
No,
going
she's
up
not.
the roof.
She was born in
They
America,
let
for
these
God's
guys
sake.
go to where they were. I would have been 5 times,
Oh, I know about
4
that.
times, 5 times higher because you're
Probably
talking
why
about
she's
3.5
mad about it.
years ago. They got it up to where I was
I'm
because they
so
had no choice
annoyed right
because
now.
the prices of energy were
don't even know what's
quadrupling
going
and doubling.
on.
You saw what happened to gasoline. So they said, let's go back to Trump. But if she won the election, the day after that election, they'll go back to destroying our country, and oil will be
I just saw
dead,
the link you
fossil
sent me,
fuel
Jack.
will be dead. We'll go back to windmills,
What's
and we'll
Agenda
go back to
47?
solar, where they need a whole desert to get some energy to come out.
I don't
You
think
ever
this
see a
is the
solar
same thing as
plant? By the way,
Project
I'm a big fan of
2025.
solar.
It is.
But they take
I thought.
400,
That's not.
500 acres of
Oh.
desert
President
soil.
Trump, we have a
These
lot
are
of
not good
issues
things
that we
for the
have to get
environment.
to.
This
We're
year.
out of time. Thank you.
Pharmaceuticals.
Lindsay, thank you. We
Death
have an election
penalty.
in just
President Trump
56
calls for
days.
death penalty
And
for
I
human
want to talk about the
traffickers.
peaceful transfer of power, which, of course, we
Rebuilding
all know
America's
is a cornerstone of
military,
our democracy and the
protecting
role of a
Americans,
president
protecting
in a moment of
students.
crisis.
Yeah, no, it's not Project
Mr.
2025,
President, on
we're good.
January 6th, you told your supporters to march to the Capitol.
Project
You said you would
2025
be
is
right there
literally
with
like
them.
deleting the
The
government.
country and the world saw what
Yeah,
played
no,
out at
that's
the Capitol
that's
that
just
day.
getting
The
rid of checks and
officers
balances.
coming
Yeah.
under attack. Aides in the West Wing say you watched it unfold
I'm watching it
on
right
television
now.
off the Oval Office. You did send out tweets,
Oh,
but it was
I
more
am-
than 2 hours before you sent out that
I'm
video
fired
message telling your supporters to go home. Is there anything you regret
see.
about what you did on that day?
You just said a
It's not
thing
bad.
that isn't covered.
A lot of
Peacefully
lying.
and patriotically.
better than the
I said
Biden
during
debate.
my speech, not later on.
That was
Good
so
point.
bad.
Peacefully and
But it was just
patriotically.
sad.
And nobody on
You
the
can
other
see how
side
far
was killed.
Biden has fallen.
Ashley Babbitt was shot
Yeah.
by an
Dude,
out-of-control
Senator
police officer
Biden back in the
that
70s
should
would have been a great
never,
president.
ever shot
Bro,
her.
he
It's a
was
disgrace.
spitting.
But we didn't
Back when he
do
was a
this
senator,
group of
though.
people that have
He
been
would have been a
treated
great
so
president.
badly.
Now he's just
I
so
ask,
old.
what about all the people that are pouring into our country and killing people that she allowed to pour in? She was the border czar. Remember
We're
that.
back on
She
immigrants?
was the border czar. She doesn't want to be called the
We're
border
never
czar
gonna
because she's
get to the
embarrassed by
actual
border. In fact, she
policies.
said at
Bro,
the
it's like we
beginning, "Oh, I'm
restarted the
surprised you're not talking
interview."
about the border yet."
Dude,
That's
Cat,
because
make
my-
she
wait,
knows
did we
how bad
restart it?
job
Cat,
they've done.
look.
What about those people?
No.
When are they
No.
going to be
Dude,
Oops.
prosecuted? When are these
still-
people from countries all over the world, not just South America, they're coming in from
Oh God,
all
even she looks
over
tired.
the world.
She looks
David,
like she's gonna
all
cry.
over the world, and crime rates are
looks
down all
annoyed.
over the world because of
It's
it.
the
Let me-
same
when are those-
thing
David,
over
when are
and
those people
over
going to be
again.
prosecuted? When are the people
don't
that
blame her. I'd
burned
be
down
kind of annoyed if
Minneapolis
we're
going to be
going back and
prosecuted?
forth over
Or in
again.
Seattle, they went
Dude, he
into
just keeps
Seattle.
going
they
back
took
and
over
forth.
I have that binding on my
percentage of the
keyboard,
city of
sorry.
Seattle.
I didn't
When are
hear
those
you.
people going to be
You
prosecuted?
didn't hear this?
But let me just
No.
ask
You
you.
might ask her that question.
You were the president. You were watching it unfold on television. It's a very simple
I'm streaming
question
this
as
to
we move
YouTube
forward
right
toward
now.
another election. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day? Yes or no?
I had nothing to do with that
I'm just
other
archiving
than they
it,
asked me to
that's it.
make a speech. I showed up for a speech. I said, I think it's going to be big. I went to Nancy Pelosi and the mayor
Nancy
of
Pelosi.
Washington, D.C.
Now we're talking about
and
January
the mayor
6th,
put it
right?
back in
Oh
writing,
my
as you know. I
God!
said,
Capital attack?
It was
this is
3
gonna be a
years
very
ago.
Big rally or whatever you
That's
want
all
to
they
years
talk
ago.
every
And again, it
every
wasn't done by
debate
me,
they
it was done
always
by
talk
others.
about the Capitol
I said,
riots.
Dude,
I'd
nobody
like to give
cares.
you
Have you
They're all in
noticed that they
jail.
never let it go?
They're all in jail.
They rejected me. Nancy Pelosi rejected
Nancy
me. It was
Pelosi.
just 2 weeks ago. Her daughter has a
I
tape
hate Nancy
of her
Pelosi,
saying
but-
she is fully responsible for what happened. They want to get rid of that tape. It would have never
just gets
happened
the
if Nancy
fucking point.
Pelosi and the
Oh.
mayor
Nancy
of Washington
Pelosi.
did their jobs. I
Nancy
wasn't
Pelosi.
responsible for security. Nancy Pelosi.
Nancy
was responsible.
Pelosi.
She didn't
How
do
many
her
times
job.
can you
The
say
question
Nancy
was about you as
Pelosi?
president,
Nancy
not
Pelosi.
about former
I
Speaker
think you
Pelosi.
still got
But I
another
do
one
want
in
Vice
him.
President Harris to respond
Hold
here.
on. We gotta get a Nancy Pelosi comment.
I was at the Capitol on January 6th. I was
Oh my God,
the
just
vice
move
president elect.
on!
I was also an acting senator.
I
was
love
there.
being extraordinarily
And on
loud
that
and
day, the President of the United States incited a violent mob to attack our nation's capital, to desecrate our nation's capital. On that day, 140 law enforcement officers were injured, and some died. And understand, the former president has been indicted and impeached for exactly that reason. But this is not an isolated situation. Let's remember Charlottesville, where there was a mob of people carrying tiki torches, spewing anti-Semitic hate. And what did
here we
the
go.
president then at the time say? There were fine people on each side. Let's remember that when it came to the Proud Boys, a militia, the president said, the former president said, stand back and stand by. So for everyone watching who remembers what January 6th was, I say we don't have to go back.
I don't want to go
Let's
back.
not go back. We're not
Holy
going
yap.
back. It's time to turn the page.
I don't know.
And
Thank
if
you.
that was a bridge too far for you, well, there is a place in our campaign for you to stand for country,
Dude, nobody
to
was
stand
traumatized after
for our
January 6th
democracy,
like
to
it was
stand
9/11,
for
bro.
rule of law,
Nobody
and to end the
cares.
chaos.
I remember
and to
hearing
end
about it.
the
I was-
approach that is about
I remember
attacking
hearing
the
about it and just being
foundations
like,
of our democracy because you don't
wow.
like the outcome.
Just a regular
and
day.
Be clear
just
on that point.
regular day in the
Donald
USA,
Trump,
I was like,
David.
oh
candidate,
shit, this
has
is
said
that's
in this
crazy.
election there will be a
Oh,
bloodbath.
fuck.
If this and the outcome of this election is not to his liking, let's turn the page on this. Let's not go back. Let's
Did you
chart
say
a
that?
course for
She
the
did, she
future and not go backwards to the past.
Let me just follow up here.
You gotta give
It
these
was
guys
a
Adderall
different
before
term,
they
and it was a term
start.
that related to energy
they don't
because they
repeat
have
themselves 100
destroyed our
times.
energy business. That was where Bloodbath was.
Dude,
Also,
and NBC
on
ain't doing
Charlottesville,
shit about
that
it.
story has been, as you would say, debunked. Laura
Okay, I just
Ingraham,
noticed this.
Sean
Why
Hannity,
is there the
Jesse,
NBC
all
logo,
of these people,
and
they
then there's
covered
the
it. If they go
ABC
an
at the
extra
bottom?
sentence, they will see it was perfect. It was debunked in almost every newspaper, but they still bring it up, just like they bring 2025 up. They bring all of this stuff up. I ask you this: you talk
America
about
decides.
the Capitol. Why are we allowing these millions of people to come through on the southern border? How come she's not doing anything? And I'll tell you what I would do, and I would be very proud to do it. I would say we would both leave this debate right now. I'd like to see her go down to Washington, D.C. during this debate, because we're wasting a lot of time. Go down to, because she's been so bad, it's so ridiculous. Go down to Washington, D.C. and let her sign a bill to close up the border, because they have the right to do it. They don't need bills. They have the right to do it. The President of the United States, you'll get him out of bed, you'll wake him up at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, you'll say, come on down to the office, let's sign a bill. If he signs a bill that the border is closed, all he has to do is say it to the Border Patrol, who are phenomenal. If they do that, the border is closed.
Mr.
Those
President,
people are killing many people, unlike J6.
We talked immigration here tonight. I do want to focus on this next issue to both of you, because it really brings us this into focus, truth in these times that we're living in. Mr. President, for 3.5 years after you lost the 2020 election, you repeatedly falsely claimed that you won, many times saying you won in a landslide. In the past couple of weeks leading up to this debate, you have said, quote, you lost by a whisker, that you, quote, didn't quite make it, that you came up a little bit short.
I said that?
Are you now acknowledging that
I
you
said
lost
that?
in 2020?
No, I don't acknowledge that at all.
But
I
you
said
did
that
say that.
sarcastically.
But
You know
those-
that. It was said, oh, we lost by a whisker. That was said sarcastically. Look, there's so much proof. All you have to do is look at it. And they should have sent it back to the legislatures for approval. I got almost 75 million votes, the most votes any sitting president has ever gotten. I was told if I got 63, which was what I got in 2016, you can't be beaten. The election, people should never be thinking about an election as fraudulent. We need two things. We need walls, and we have to have it. We have to have borders, and we have to have good elections. Our elections are bad. And a lot of these illegal immigrants coming in, they're trying to get them to
Part of the
vote.
problem
They
is the
can't
whole
even
fact
speak
that we
English.
only
They
have
don't
2
even know what
parties,
country they're in
and only 2
practically.
parties are
And these
given
people are
well,
trying to
we
get
have
them
more.
to vote.
There's
And
only
that's
2 of
why
them are
they're
given the
allowing them to come into our
fucking-
country.
Yeah, that's
I
some
watched all
bullshit.
of
We
these
shouldn't
pieces
have
of
a
video.
two-party system.
I
George
didn't
Washington
detect the
said not
sarcasm.
to.
Lost by a whisker. We didn't quite make it. And
When
we should just
the
point out here, as
Independent was still
clarification, and you
running, they
know
never
this,
did a
you
debate
and your
with him.
allies, 60 cases in front of many
Never
judges,
once.
many of them
No judge
Republican.
looked at
I think
it.
Kennedy's
and
They
hosting
said
his own
we
debate
didn't have
today, by the way.
standing. That's the other thing. They said
Also,
we
this
didn't
is
have
my
standing,
YouTube
a
thumbnail that I
technicality.
just
Can
chose
you
on a whim.
imagine a system
I don't know
where
who he's
a
debating.
person in an election doesn't have standing, the president
Fucking
of the
gonna
United
debate
States
Ben Shapiro?
doesn't have standing? That's how we lost. If you look at the facts, and I'd love to have you do a special on it, I'll show you Georgia, and I'll show you Wisconsin, and I'll show you Pennsylvania. and I'll
Georgia!
show you- we have so many facts and
Wisconsin!
statistics. But you know what? That doesn't matter, because we have to solve the problem that we have right now. That's old news. And the problem that we have right now is we have a nation in decline, and they have put it into decline. We have a nation that is dying, David.
What are we
Mr.
talking
President,
about?
thank you. Vice President Harris,
Who
you
did
heard the
what?
president
Who's
there
killing the
tonight.
nation?
He said he didn't say
You-
that he lost by a whisker.
The nation
still,
is dying.
He
Yes.
did not lose
The
the
nation-
election.
how are you gonna fix
that
it,
was won by
please?
Yeah,
President
Biden's
Biden,
been killing the
and
nation 'cause he's
yourself.
brain dead.
But I do want to ask you about something that's come up in the last couple of days.
Can you
This
at
was a
least tell me
post
how
from,
you plan to
President
fix it,
Trump
Mr. Trump?
about this upcoming election just weeks away. He said, when I win, those people who cheated, and then he lists donors, voters, election officials, he says will be prosecuted
Donors
to the
are
fullest
lobbyists,
extent
by
of the
the way.
law, which will include long-term prison sentences.
Essentially, yeah.
One of your
They're just
campaign's
lobbyists.
top lawyers responded saying, we won't let Donald Trump intimidate us. We won't let him suppress the vote. Is that what you believe he's trying to do here?
Donald Trump was fired by 81 million people. So let's be clear about that. And clearly, he is having a very difficult time processing that. But we cannot afford to have a president of the United States who
Why does she have a gold
attempts,
flag on
as
her
he did in
suit,
the past,
and he has a
to
regular
upend
one?
the will of the voters in a free and fair
that?
election. And I'm going to tell you that I have traveled the world as Vice President of the United States, and world leaders are laughing at Donald Trump. I have talked with
Laughing at
military
Biden,
leaders,
too.
some of whom worked with you, and they say you're a disgrace. And when you then talk
She
in
already said
this
this, by the way.
way in a presidential debate and deny what over and over
Like 10
again
minutes
are
ago, she already
court
said it.
cases you have lost because you did in fact lose that election, it leads one to believe that perhaps we do not have in the candidate to my right the temperament or the ability to not be confused about fact. That's deeply troubling, and the American people deserve better.
I'll give you 1 minute to respond, Mr. President.
Let me just say about world leaders. Viktor Orban, one of the most respected men, they call him a strong man. He's a tough person, smart. Prime Minister of Hungary. They said, why is the whole world blowing up? 3 years ago it wasn't. Why is it blowing up? He said, because you need Trump back as president. They were afraid of him. China was afraid, and I don't like to use the word afraid, but I'm just quoting him. China was afraid of him. North Korea was afraid of him. Look at what's going on with North Korea, by the way. He said Russia was afraid of him. I ended the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, and Biden put it back on day one, but he ended the XL pipeline. The XL pipeline in our country, he ended that. But he let the Russians build a pipeline going all over Europe and heading into Germany, the biggest pipeline in the world. Look, Viktor Orban said it. He said the most respected, most feared person is Donald Trump. We had no problems when Trump was president. But when this weak, pathetic man that you saw at a debate just a few months ago, that if he weren't in that debate, he'd be running instead of her. She got no votes. He got 14 million votes. What you did, you talk about a threat to democracy. He got 14 million votes, and they threw him out of office. And you know what? I'll give you a little secret. He hates her. He can't stand her. But he got 14 million votes. They threw him out. She got 0 votes. And when she ran, she was the first one to leave because she failed. And now she's running. I don't understand it, but
Mr.
I'm okay
President,
with it
Mr.
because
President, your time is
I
up.
think we're
Thank
going to
you.
do very well.
We've got a lot more to get to.
Turning now to the Israel-Hamas war and the hostages who are still being held.
I love how they
Americans
still
among
address
them.
him as
Vice
president,
President
though.
Harris in
I
December,
know, it's kinda
you said,
weird,
quote,
right?
Israel has a right to
No, I
defend
think it's
itself. You
funny.
added, quote, it matters how. Saying
Because it
international
pisses her off,
humanitarian law
so it's
must be
funny.
respected. Israel must do more to protect innocent civilians. You said that 9 months ago. Now an estimated 40,000 Palestinians are dead. Nearly 100 hostages remain. Just last week,
Why
Prime
can't they
Minister
share a
Benjamin
country?
Netanyahu said there's not a deal in the making.
Why is
President
this a
Biden has
problem?
not been able to break through the
Just call
stalemate.
it.
How would you do it?
Just call it.
Well,
Israel,
let's
Palestine.
understand how we got here.
something.
On October 7, Hamas, a terrorist organization, slaughtered 1,200 Israelis.
No, really?
Many of them young people who were simply attending
Wow.
a concert.
News to
Women
me.
were horribly raped. And so absolutely, I said then, I say now,
Yeah,
Israel
it was
has a
fucked.
right to defend itself. We would. And how it does so matters. Because it is also true, far too many innocent Palestinians have
She
been
kind of
killed.
talks like him. I'm not gonna lie.
Children, mothers.
Far
What
too
we
many.
know is that this war must end. It must end immediately, and the way it will end is we need a ceasefire deal and we need the hostages out. And so we will
They've
continue
been
to
saying
work
that
around
forever,
the clock
dude.
on that. Work
get 'em
around the
out.
clock,
How
also
about that?
understanding that we must chart a course for a two-state solution. And in that solution, there must be
That just can't
security
work.
for the Israeli
They don't
people
agree
and
with
Israel,
religion,
and
they
in
don't
equal
agree with
measure for
who
the
owns the land, they don't
Palestinians.
agree with
But the one thing
resources.
I will assure you
It's
always,
the same way
I
when
will
Britain
always
left
give Israel the ability to
the UK
defend
left
itself, in particular as
India.
it relates to
The way they
relates to
divided it, they
Iran
left it in
and any
shambles.
threat that Iran and its proxies pose to Israel. But we must have a two-state solution where we can rebuild Gaza, where the Palestinians have security, self-determination, and the dignity they so rightly deserve.
President Trump, how would you negotiate with Netanyahu and also
I like
Hamas
this.
in order to get the hostages out and prevent the killing of more innocent civilians in Gaza?
If I were president, it would have never started. If I were
Okay, well,
president,
tell me how you-
Russia would have never, ever. I know
How would you
Putin
stop
very
it?
well. He would have never.
Huh?
There was no threat of it either.
How-
by the
how
way.
do you
Pause, pause.
Have gone into Ukraine and killed millions of people.
I
and you ended up
know.
far worse than people
Who
understand what's
in?
going on over there.
Really?
But when she mentions
Well.
about Israel all of a sudden. She
Yeah,
hates
you do,
Israel.
man.
She
Sure.
wouldn't even meet
Oh, yeah,
with
yeah, he does.
Netanyahu
Yeah.
when he went to Congress to make a very
That's a little
important speech.
concerning.
She refused to be there because she was
Yeah.
at a sorority party of hers. She wanted to go to the sorority party. She
are you
hates
doing?
Israel. If she's president, I believe that Israel will not exist within 2 years from now. And I've been pretty good at predictions, and I hope I'm wrong about that one. She hates Israel. At the same time, in her own way, she hates the Arab population
Well-
because the
Okay.
whole place is going to get blown up. Arabs,
Huh?
Jewish
Huh?
people, Israel.
What?
Israel will be gone. It would have never happened. Iran was broke
Nice.
under Donald Trump. Now Iran has $300 billion because they took off all the sanctions that I had. Iran had
fair.
no money for Hamas or Hezbollah or any of the 28 different
I think that's true, I think.
spheres of terror. And they are spheres of terror, horrible terror. They had no money. It was a big story, and you know it. You covered it very well, actually. They had no money for terror. They were broke. Now they're a rich nation, and now what they're doing is they're spreading that money around. Look at what's happening with the Houthis and Yemen. Look at what's going on in the Middle East. This would have never happened. I will get that settled and fast, and I'll get the war with Ukraine and Russia ended. If I'm president-elect, I'll get it done before even becoming president.
Vice President Harris, he says you hate Israel.
That's absolutely not true. I
Why are you
my
sweating?
entire career and life supported Israel and the Israeli people. He knows that. He's trying to, again, divide and distract
Pause.
from the
Why did she
reality,
chuckle,
which
like,
is,
nervously?
it is
She was
very
like,
well known
I don't hate
that
Israel.
Donald Trump is weak and wrong on national security and foreign policy. It is well known that he admires dictators, wants to be a dictator on day one, according to himself. It is well known that he said of Putin that he can do whatever the hell he wants and go into Ukraine.
You said
It
this
is
where?
well known that he said when Russia went
I didn't
into
have my mic
Ukraine,
unmuted.
it was brilliant. It is well known he exchanged love letters with Kim Jong-un.
Love letters.
And
Oh
it
my
is absolutely well known
What?
that these dictators
Pause.
and
Love
autocrats
letters?
are rooting
I
Love
don't think
letters.
that, I
to
don't
be
think that was the
president
case.
again because they're so clear.
Kinky.
They can manipulate you with
fuck?
flattery and favors. And that is why so many military leaders who you have worked with have told me you are a disgrace. That is why we understand that we have to have a president who is not consistently weak and wrong on
Vice
national
President
security,
Harris.
including the importance of upholding and respecting
guys,
in
guys.
highest regard our military.
Okay, all right,
Vice
all
President
right.
Harris, thank you.
Holy.
And she's the one that caused it. That's weak on national security by allowing every nation last month for the year, 168 different countries sending people into our country. Their crime rates are way down. Putin endorsed her last week, said, I hope she wins. And I think he meant it because what he's gotten away with is absolutely incredible. It wouldn't have happened with me. The leaders of other countries think that they're weak and incompetent, and they are. They're grossly incompetent. And I just ask one question. Why does Biden go in and kill the Keystone Pipeline and approve the single biggest deal that Russia's ever made, Nord Stream 2, the biggest pipeline anywhere in the world going to Germany and all over Europe? Because they're weak and they're ineffective. And Biden, by the way,
President
gets paid
Trump,
a lot of money.
Thank you. We have a lot of issues to get to.
We'll be right back.
We
with
have
much
a
more of
lot
this
of
historic
issues.
ABC News presidential
Oh, yes,
debate
we
from
do.
the National
News channel that
Constitution
let them
Center
go back
right
to
here in
immigrants
Philadelphia.
and-
Back in a moment.
Yeah, they kept letting them talk about it.
Several times. Well, the moment he starts getting into that, they stop him.
The ABC News presidential debate will continue after this.
That's kind of interesting. They let him go through several things multiple times.
Yeah. I got a picture of Trump though.
Are they only gonna talk about Trump? Are they gonna?
Dude, they
throw
keep
some Harris stuff on
going
there?
back and forth. I want to hear what Kamala has to say. I don't know much about her policies.
Yeah, like I kind of want to learn about their policies and how they plan to fix these problems.
I don't
Not
want.
just former president, vice president, they're bad, and they're democracy. Shut the fuck up.
Let me know when it's back
I don't
on.
like this debate.
It's not good.
I just ended my friendship with Max, so I'm not the happiest right now.
Wait, what?
Why?
Because I just heard him say the most unbelievable shit, and I don't ever want to speak to him again.
Wait, what did he say? What?
He said that he was just saying like
Oh my god. Okay. The fuck is going on out there?
Oh, dang.
Dude, we need to get the old people out of Congress, bro. I'm actually kind of happy that I actually kind of hope Kamala wins because she's younger than Trump by a lot.
Yeah. Isn't she in like her 50s?
I think it's like 52.
Like, that's pretty cool.
Hold on, let me.
Trump is what, like 80?
He's 78, I think.
Damn. Old as hell. I think she's like 55.
Kamala Harris is 59.
59.
Yeah, Trump is 78 and Biden's 81.
Relatively young compared to all the other presidents.
Well, you have to be 45 to run for president.
35.
35? Oh, I thought it was 45.
It might be 45. I don't remember.
Because JFK was like 40.
Oh yeah, it's probably 35 then. You know? Sony unveils upgrade PlayStation 5 Pro to boost flagging console business.
Flagging? What does that mean?
I have no clue. Tampons!
Are the toxic chemicals in tampons harmful? I sure hope not. But yeah, they're probably.
You know, you're kind of putting that in a very compromising place. I hope not.
They kind of are toxic chemicals.
They are toxic chemicals. So you
Man,
gotta get good ones.
That's probably
Put
why.
the cocaine back in them, man.
They put cocaine in tampons. What is that picture? That is
the
scary.
cocaine would actually really help with the cramps. That's why they used it, because it helps. It's like an anesthetic.
Oh, I actually didn't know what cocaine was actually used for.
Yeah. It was a general anesthetic used to help with period cramps.
Oh. And now people snort it.
Yeah.
Or smoke it.
Well, it's used for, you know, drugs too and all that stuff, but they just happened to find that it worked really well for that. I don't know who tested that, but dude, we are so fucked.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I kind of want Kamala to win though.
She does. She sounds better out of the two. They don't sound good, but I mean.
But it just worries me how they never talk about their policies.
Somebody posted on his story, no way he's talking about eating cats, dogs, and accusing her of allowing abortion after birth.
Yeah, who's eating cats and dogs? What? I've heard of the gangs taking over apartment buildings. I haven't heard of them eating cats and dogs. Yeah.
Alright.
This conflict. Mr. President, it has been the position of the Biden administration that we must defend Ukraine from Russia, from Vladimir Putin, to defend their sovereignty, their democracy, that it's in America's best interest to do so, arguing that if Putin wins, he may be emboldened to move even further into other countries. You have said you would solve this war in 24 hours. You said so just before the break tonight. How exactly would you do that? And I want to ask you a very simple question tonight. Do you want Ukraine to win this war?
I want the war to stop. I want to save lives that are being uselessly, people being killed by the millions. It's the millions. It's so much worse than the numbers that you're getting, which are fake numbers. Look, we're in for 250 billion or more because they don't ask Europe, which is a much bigger beneficiary to getting this thing done than we are. they're in for $150 billion less because Biden and you don't have the courage to ask Europe like I did with NATO. They paid billions and billions, hundreds of billions of dollars when I said, either you pay up or we're not going to protect you anymore. So that's maybe one of the reasons they don't like me as much as they like weak people. But you take a look at what's happening. We're in for 250 to 275 billion. They're into 100 to 150. They should be forced to equalize. With that being said, I want to get the war settled. I know Zelensky very well, and I know Putin very well. I have a good relationship, and they respect your president, okay? They respect me. They don't respect Biden. How would you respect him? Why? For what reason? He hasn't even made a phone call in 2 years to Putin, hasn't spoken to anybody. They don't even try and get it. That is a war that's dying to be settled. I will get it settled before I even become president. If I win, when I'm president-elect, and what I'll do is I'll speak to one, I'll speak to the other, I'll get them together. That war would have never happened. And in fact, when I saw Putin after I left, unfortunately left because our country has gone to hell. But after I left, when I saw him building up soldiers, he did it after I left, I said, oh, he must be negotiating. It must be a good, strong point of negotiation. Well, it wasn't, because Biden had no idea how to talk to him. He had no idea how to stop it. And now you have millions of people dead, and it's only getting worse, and it could lead to World War III. Don't kid yourself, David. We're playing with World War III, and we have a president that we don't even know if he's. Where is our president? We don't even know if he's a president.
And just to
Okay, now we're yelling.
Out of a campaign like a dog. We don't even know. Is he our president? But we have a president,
Mr. President,
that doesn't know he's alive.
Your time is up. Just to clarify in the question, do you believe it's in the U.S. best interest for Ukraine to win this war, yes or no?
I think it's the U.S. best interest to get this war finished and just get it done.
All right.
Negotiate a deal, because we have to.
He's pissed
stop
now.
all of these human
I feel like he
lives
said several
from being
times he just
destroyed.
I
wants
want to
the
take
war
this to
over.
Vice President Harris.
Yeah,
I want
he
to
But they
get
did.
still
your
ask him the
thoughts
same
on,
question
support
100
for
times
Ukraine
over.
in this moment, but also as Commander-in-Chief, if elected, how would you deal with Vladimir Putin, and would it be any different from what we're seeing from President Biden?
Well, first of all, it's important to remind the former president you're not running against Joe Biden, you're running against me. I believe the reason that Donald Trump says that this war would be over within 24 hours is because he would just give it up. And that's not who we are as Americans. Let's
How would he
understand
give
what
it up?
happened
It's
here.
not his country.
I actually
He has no control
met
over
with
it.
Zelensky a few days before Russia invaded, tried through force to change territorial boundaries, to defy one of the most important international rules and norms, which is the importance of sovereignty and territorial integrity. And I met with President Zelensky. I shared with him American intelligence about how he could defend himself. Days later, I went to NATO's eastern flank, to Poland and Romania. And through the work that I and others did, we brought 50 countries together to support Ukraine in its righteous defense. And because of our support, because of the air defense, the ammunition, the artillery,
I just
the
don't think we
javelins,
want any
the
war.
Abrams tanks that we have provided,
I don't want
Ukraine
war.
stands as an independent
So because
and
of
free
all that
country.
you've done, the
If
war
Donald
has
Trump
dragged
were
on for
president,
2.5
Putin
years.
would be sitting
Yeah.
in Kyiv right
Continuing
now.
to die to this
And
day.
understand what that would mean.
Congratulations.
Because Putin's agenda is
Fucking
not just
shut
about
up.
Ukraine. Understand why the European allies and our NATO allies are so thankful that you are no longer president, and that we understand the importance of the greatest military alliance the world has ever known, which is NATO, and what we have done to preserve the ability of Zelensky and the Ukrainians to fight for their independence. Otherwise, Putin would be sitting in
You know what we
Kyiv
need?
with his eyes on the rest of
We need
Europe,
aliens to
starting
invade
with
Earth.
Poland. And why don't you tell the 800,000
That is the only
Polish
reason
Americans
humans would
right
ever
here in
unite.
Pennsylvania how quickly
I
you
know,
would
and
give
it's
up
so
for the
sad.
sake of favor
The
Because-
only thing we
what you
ever
think
can
is a
fully
friendship
agree on is during
with
a war.
what is known to be a dictator.
The thing
who would
is,
eat
too,
you
is
for
that do you know
lunch.
how good a world
Vice
government would
President
actually
Harris, thank you.
be?
We've heard from both of you on Ukraine tonight.
just scary.
Afghanistan
World
came up in
government
the
gets
last hour. I wanted her to respond
get
to something you said
corrupted and
earlier.
fucked
And
fast.
please, I'll
can,
give you a minute here.
But if it,
Putin would be sitting in Moscow,
I don't know.
and he wouldn't have lost
That goes
300,000
hand in
men
hand with the New World
and
Order.
women, but he would have
Yeah,
been
that's-
sitting in
yeah.
Moscow. Quiet, please. He would have been
Quiet,
Quiet,
please.
please.
much happier than he is right
He's
now.
so funny,
Nice
dude.
about it.
Eventually, you know, he's got a thing that other people don't have. He's got nuclear
This is
weapons.
a
They don't ever
please.
talk about that. He's got nuclear weapons. Nobody ever thinks about that.
We do
And
too.
Eventually, maybe he'll use them, and maybe he hasn't been that threatening. But he does have that, something we don't even like to talk about. Nobody likes to talk about it. But just so you understand, they sent her to negotiate peace before this war started. 3 days later, he went in and he started the war because everything they said was weak and stupid. They said the wrong things. That war should have never started. She was the emissary. They sent her in to negotiate with Zelensky and Putin, and she did. And the war started 3 days later.
Where's the
And that's
sources,
kind of
dude?
talent we have with her. She's worse than
I don't
Biden.
even know.
In my
They are
opinion,
doing
I
a
think he's the
fact
worst
checking. I
president
saw
in
that
the
on, like,
history
the
of our
bottom.
country. She goes down as the worst vice president in the history of our country. But let me tell you something. She is a horrible negotiator. They sent her in to negotiate. As soon as they left, Putin did the invasion.
President Trump, thank you. You did bring up something. You said she went to negotiate with Vladimir Putin. Vice President Harris, have you ever met Vladimir Putin? Can you clarify tonight?
Yet again, I said it at the beginning of this debate, you're going to hear a bunch of lies coming from this fellow. And that is another one.
This
When I
fella.
went to meet with President Zelensky, I've now met with him over 5 times. The reality is, it has
You have
been
to hold
about
up the number
standing as
5.
America always should.
She can count to
As
5.
a leader upholding international
Good job.
rules and norms,
you
as
get
a
a piece of
leader who
candy.
shows strength, understanding that the
get 5
alliances we
minutes
have
on the iPad.
around the world are dependent on our ability to look out for our friends and not favor our enemies because you adore strongmen instead of caring about democracy. And that is very much what is at stake here. The President of the United States is commander-in-chief, and the American people have a right to rely on a president who understands the significance of America's role and responsibility in terms of ensuring that there is stability and ensuring we stand up for our principles and not sell them for the,
Bro, her
for
voice
the
actually is so
benefit of
annoying.
personal flattery.
We've talked about Ukraine and Vladimir Putin. I do want to talk about Afghanistan. It came up in the first hour of this debate. I want to move on to Afghanistan.
Stoltenberg said Trump did the most amazing thing I've ever seen. He got these countries, the 28 countries at the time, to pay up. He said, I've never seen, he's the head of NATO. He said, I've never seen. For years, we were paying almost all of NATO. We were being ripped off by European nations, both on trade and on NATO. I got them to pay up by saying one of the statements you made before, if you don't pay, we're not going to protect you.
President
Otherwise,
Trump.
we would have never gotten it. He said it was one of the most incredible jobs that he's ever seen done.
Thank you. I want to turn to Afghanistan. It came up in the first hour of the debate, and we witnessed a poignant
How long
moment
is this
today in
debate
Capitol
gonna
Hill
be? I
honoring
gotta
the
go to
soldiers who
bed.
died in the chaotic withdrawal from Afghanistan. I do want to ask the Vice President, do you believe you bear any responsibility in the way that withdrawal played out?
Well, I will tell you, I agreed with President Biden's decision to pull out of Afghanistan. 4 presidents said they would, and Joe Biden did. And as a result, America's taxpayers are not paying the $300 million a day we were paying for that endless war. And as of today, there is not one member of the United States military who is in active duty in a combat zone in any war zone around the world, the first time this century. But let's understand how we got to where we are.
Yeah, then the
Donald
Taliban
Trump,
took
when he
over
was president,
Afghanistan
negotiated
immediately.
one of the weakest deals you can imagine. He calls himself a deal maker. Even his national security advisor said it was a weak, terrible deal. And here's how it went down. He bypassed the Afghan government. He negotiated directly with a terrorist organization called the Taliban. The negotiation involved the Taliban getting 5,000 Taliban terrorists released. And get this, and the president at the time invited the Taliban to Camp David, a place of storied significance for us as Americans, a place where we honor the importance of American diplomacy, where we invite and receive respected world leaders. And this former president, as president, invited them to Camp David because he does not again appreciate the role and responsibility of the President of the United States to be commander-in-chief with a level of respect. And this gets back to the point of how he has consistently disparaged and demeaned members of our military, fallen soldiers, and the work that we must do to uphold the strength and the respect of the United States of America around the world.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump, your response to her saying that you began the negotiations with the Taliban.
So, if you take a look at that period of time, the Taliban was killing our soldiers, a lot of them, with snipers. And I got involved with the Taliban because the Taliban was doing the killing. That's the fighting force within Afghanistan. They don't bother doing that because, you know, they deal with the wrong people all the time. But I got involved. And Abdul is the head of the Taliban. He is still the head of the Taliban. And I told Abdul, don't do it anymore. You do it anymore, you're going to have problems. And he said, why do you send me a picture of my house? I said, you're going to have to figure that out, Abdul. And for
I forgot about that.
Wait, what?
No,
Pause.
you know,
What?
Trump sent the leader of the Taliban a picture of his house.
It was good. It was. We were getting
Like-
out.
Like
as
a
like-
bomb threat?
No, just like a threat. Yeah.
He straight up doxed the Taliban leader.
Yeah, he sent him a picture of his own
$1
house.
billion worth of brand new, beautiful military equipment.
He
behind
also,
it. And just to finish, they
sent a drone to
blew it.
kill an
The
Iranian
agreement
general
said you have to
and
do this, this, and they
with like a
didn't do it.
dog in
They
armor
didn't
or
do
something.
it.
I don't remember
The
how it was
agreement
killed, how he was killed,
was
but like,
terminated by us because they
um,
didn't do what they were supposed to
dude,
do.
this is so
These
mind-numbing.
people did the worst withdrawal, and in my
Dude,
opinion, the most embarrassing moment in the history of our
Yeah,
country. And by the way,
I think he
that's
killed the
why
leader of
Russia
ISIS.
attacked Ukraine, because they saw
al-Baghdadi
how
is
incompetent
dead.
she and her boss are.
Al-Baghdadi.
President Trump, thank you. I want to move on now to race and politics in this
Oh my
country.
God.
Mr. President, you recently said of Vice President Harris, quote, I didn't know she was black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn black, and now she wants to be known as black. I want to ask a bigger picture question.
He's
tonight.
so
black.
funny,
Do you believe
dude.
it's appropriate to weigh in on the racial identity of your opponent?
I don't, and I don't care. I don't care what she is. I don't care. You make a big deal out of something. I couldn't care less. Whatever she wants to be is okay with me.
But those were your words, so I'm
I
asking.
don't know. I don't know. I mean, all I can say is I read where she was not black, that she put out, and I'll say that. And then I read that she was black, and that's okay. Either one was okay with me. That's up to her. That's up to her.
Vice President Harris, your thoughts on this?
She's gonna identify.
I think
against
it's, I mean, honestly, I think it's a tragedy that we have someone who wants to be president who has consistently, over the course of his career, attempted to use race to divide the American people.
Huh?
You know, I
Has
do
he?
believe that the vast majority of
I
us
don't know.
know that we have so much more in common than what
No?
separates us, and we don't want
I've seen a lot of
this
like,
kind of
there-
approach
I've
that
seen
is
a
just
lot of
constantly
black
trying to
people who
divide
like
us,
Trump.
and especially by race. And let's remember
So I don't
how
know
Donald
what
Trump
that's supposed to
started. He was a land, he owned land, he owned buildings, and he was investigated
businessman. Good job.
because he refused to rent property to black families. Let's remember, this is the same individual who took out a full-page ad in the New York Times calling for the execution of 5 young black and Latino boys who were innocent, the Central Park 5. Took out a full-page ad calling for their execution. This is the same individual who spread birther lies about the first black president of the United States. And I think the American people want better than that, want better than this, want someone who understands,
Okay,
as
she
I
cooking.
do, I travel our country. We see in each other a friend. We see in each other a neighbor. We don't want a leader who is constantly trying to have Americans point their fingers at each other. I meet with people all the time who tell me, can we please just have discourse about how we're going to invest in the aspirations and the ambitions and the dreams of the American people? Knowing that regardless of people's color or the language their grandmother speaks, we all have the same dreams and aspirations and want a president who invests in those, not in hate and division.
Vice President Harris, thank you. Lindsay?
President Trump, this is now your 3rd time.
This is the most divisive presidency in the history of our country. There's never been anything like it. They're destroying our country, and they come up with things like what she just said. Going back many, many years, when a lot of people, including Mayor Bloomberg, agreed with me on the Central Park Five, they admitted, they said, they pled guilty. And I said, well, if they pled guilty, they badly hurt a person, killed a person ultimately. And if they pled guilty, then they pled, we're not guilty. But this is a person that has to stretch back years, 40, 50 years ago, because there's nothing now. I built one of the greatest economies in the history of the world.
Oh my God.
And I'm going to build it again. It's going to be bigger, better, and stronger. But they're destroying our economy. They have no idea what a good economy is. Their oil policies, every
Oh my
single
God,
policy.
dude.
And remember
We're back
this,
at it again, aren't we?
she is Biden. You know, she's trying to get away from Biden. I don't know the gentleman, she says. She is Biden. The worst inflation we've ever had, a horrible economy because inflation.
We're back
has
on
made
the
it so
economy
bad,
again?
and she
What
can't
happened
get
to
away with
race?
that.
Thank you. Your time is up.
I don't.
want to respond to that, though. I want to just respond briefly.
Okay.
Clearly, I am not Joe Biden, and I am certainly not
What?
Donald Trump. And what I
Really?
do offer is a new generation of leadership for our country.
Wow.
One who believes in what is possible, one who brings a sense
Dude,
of
how much you want to bet he's
optimism
gonna try to run
about what we
next
can do instead of always disparaging
next election?
the American
If he's
people.
even still alive?
I believe
I doubt he's
in
gonna
what
be
we can
alive.
do to strengthen
I don't
our
think he's
small
gonna last
businesses,
another
which is
4
why
years.
I have a
He's gonna
plan.
be
Let's talk
82.
about our plans.
I don't
and
think he's gonna last
and
another
let's
4
compare
years.
the plans. I have a plan.
I don't know.
There was
To
one
give
assassination.
startup businesses
There's probably gonna be another.
$50,000 tax deduction.
There's probably gonna be another one
To
on Kamala
pursue
Harris.
their ambitions,
surprised
their
there wasn't one
innovation,
already.
Their ideas, their hard work. I have a plan.
How radical people are on the
$6,000
right.
for young families for the first year of your child's life to help you in that most critical stage of your child's development.
You know how
I
we're all
have a
talking about
plan
racial division
that
and all
is
that?
about allowing people to be able
The
to
real
pursue
division is literally
what has
politics.
been fleeting in terms of the
It
American
literally
dream
is.
by offering
We're-
a help with down
The
payment
most
of
divided-
$25,000 down payment assistance
The most
for
division
first-time
is
home
through
buyers.
politics.
That's the kind of conversation I believe, David, that people really
Each
want
side
tonight,
hates each other
as
more than
opposed to a
anything in the world.
conversation
Like
that
they
is constantly about
despise
belittling
each other just because they
and
don't agree.
name calling.
Exactly.
Let's turn the
the same thing.
page
Vice President
and move
Harris,
forward.
thank you. Let's turn to policy.
President
Let's turn
Trump,
back
we
to
have
policy.
to move on. President Trump.
Let's turn to policy,
She has
please.
a plan to defund the police.
I love hearing
She
the
has a
echoes in the
plan
background.
To confiscate everybody's
He has
Enough
a
with us.
plan.
All
She
right.
has a
You have
All right,
plan
fine.
to
We'll
not
turn your
allow
mic on.
fracking in Pennsylvania or anywhere else.
Okay.
That's what her plan is until just recently.
I just need
Lindsay,
to
go ahead.
respond
No,
because
Trump,
no, the
President
former
Trump.
president has
No,
said
I'm
something
sorry.
twice that I need to
No,
respond to.
I'm sorry. We're
just
going
need
This is now your third time running for president. You have long vowed to repeal. any
Dude, I love.
Affordable
I'm
Care
so
Act.
glad I
President
didn't go to bed. I love how
to
this.
accomplish that.
She's so mad.
Obamacare, quote, unless we can do something much better.
See
And
why
he-
I'm
Last
doing
month you
like
said,
current
quote, "We're
events?
working
Yeah,
on it."
Trump
So
is-
I
tonight,
cannot
9
wait.
years
Trump
after
is
Oh my God,
mad,
you're
but
embracing
like
do you
class?
have a plan?
Yup.
And can you tell us what it is?
Obamacare
What
was
block?
lousy.
Obamacare.
Unfortunately, I got a
Always
second
was.
semester
It's
though,
not very good today.
so it'll be
Oh.
after the
And what I
debate
said,
or
that if we
after
come
the.
up with something,
Obamacare.
we are working on things. We're going to do it, and we're going to replace it. But remember this. I inherited Obamacare because Democrats wouldn't change it. They wouldn't vote for it. They were unanimous. They wouldn't vote to change it. If they would have done that, we would have had a much better plan than Obamacare. But the Democrats came up, they
Obamacare.
wouldn't vote for it. I had a choice to make when I was president. Do I save it and make it as good as it can be, never going to be great, or do I let it rot? And I felt I had an obligation, even though politically it would have been good to just let it rot and let it